Super Bowl 59 is just a few days away, and much like 58 and 57, it features the Kansas City Chiefs as they look for a three-peat. So, today, let's run through the season and see how did we get to this point? We did this with the Eagles a couple of days ago. Check that one out on YouTube or Daily Motion as well. Obviously, the season went really well. They're here, and they're here as the 1 seed in the AFC after a 15-2 season, and really the second of the two hardly counts, as I think I was the backup right guard for them in this game. It's weird that I could have picked any position, and I just slotted myself at right guard. Anyway, not the point. The season went really well. They start the year with a 27-20 win over the Baltimore Ravens. We all remember it. If Isaiah Likely is half a shoe size down, maybe that one is a little bit different. I would pause to say, because it is easy to throw it into all of the different ways that Kansas City fluked their way to another Super Bowl. If they kick the extra point, it's not like the Chiefs have been bad in overtimes before. And if they go for two, it's not like this defense hasn't gotten stops before, right? So I do think, yes, that would have put Baltimore in a position to tie the game, whereas otherwise it was just over. But I will say, again, that it wasn't like this, it was a 1-point game and, they just didn't get it. That they needed either an extra point, which Tucker was anything from automatic, but there's a lot of things could have happened, as we saw throughout the season. So I'm not going to just chalk that one up as an automatic, fluke win. After that, it's a close one against the Bengals. And this was one that concerned people a little bit as well, because, this one was explained off a little bit. But when you go back to it, the Bengals were one of the worst teams in the league in week one with a loss to, that was the New England game, right? They lost to New England, but then they kept this one close. And so you kind of explain it away. Cincinnati always plays the Chiefs tough. Probably more focused on this game than any of the other, or than that opening night game, right? So that one could be explained away a little bit. Then it's another close win on Sunday Night Football against the Atlanta Falcons. They moved to 3-0. They get one more one-score win over the Chargers before a 13-point win over the Saints sends them to the bye at 5-0. Another part of the season that is kind of forgotten a little bit with this Chiefs team. And look, I can understand Chiefs fatigue 1,000,000,000%, right? And this one, it does feel a little different because a few things have gone their way. Having lived through it, it felt like a lot of things went the Patriots' way as well. And I think that part of it gets overblown a lot with this team. And I do just want to mention that this team, especially on offense, had to deal with a lot of injuries this year. Isaiah Pacheco, done for most of the year. Hollywood Brown goes down right before the first game. Rashee Rice had over 75 yards in 3 straight games and then done. So and that's all in the first few games. So yeah, this offense didn't look as good this year because they had that kid Steele in the backfield for a couple of weeks, and then they had to pull Kareem Hunt off of the scrap heap. And Juju Smith-Schuster is leading this team in receiving at some points. It didn't look great because it wasn't great. But now Pacheco is back. Hollywood Brown is back. They added Hopkins. So there's a few more pieces to this team. So I just want to remind people of that. Out of the bye, they keep rolling. They get a 10-point win over the San Francisco 49ers, followed by a 7-point victory over the Las Vegas Raiders. And this is where things get dicey a little bit. If you remember, they need overtime on Monday Night Football to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who recently had lost Mike Evans. Then, a last-second field goal block against the Broncos helps them hold on for the win. And it was at this point everyone's like, well, they're just going to go 17-0. Mahomes isn't playing that well, but if they go 17-0, we have to give him the MVP award. And that got shut down after their epic showdown with the Buffalo Bills. It's a 30-21 loss for Kansas City. Of note, the Chiefs lost both games this season where their defense gave up 30 points. This was the one, and it was tough to get the kind of perception back on track for Kansas City because you have what felt like a bit of a fluky win over the Denver Broncos, although they were the ones who blocked the field goal. But it felt like a bit of a fluky win against the Broncos, and then you lose against the most legitimate competition that you will face for the rest of the season. And so at that point, everyone's just like, yeah, they're probably gonna cruise, and they're probably gonna finish first in the conference, but we're not taking this seriously. Again, I caution against that. But to each their own. It doesn't get a whole lot convincing from there. They let the Panthers hang around for a 30-27 win in Week 12. Then the Raiders epically screw things up on, it was a Friday game. It was Black Friday, right? That's not what they call it. Is that what they call it down there? Yeah. It was the Friday after Thanksgiving in the States. And the Raiders, they botch their timeouts. They get the ball back anyway. They're marching down the field. And then Aiden O'Connell loses the snap and the game is over, I believe is how that played out. They turned it over at the very end and just completely screwed it up. But it was remarkable amounts of mismanagement from the Raiders that allowed the Kansas City Chiefs to win it. So again, you are looking at, well, there was this one, and then there was this one, and then there was this one. Like, you can explain away a lot of the losses, a lot of the wins for the Chiefs this season, because there were some wild circumstances around a lot of those. But after that, they get another 19-17 win over the LA Chargers. Then we get to a stretch that I think is under-discussed a little bit. They get a 21-17 win over the Cleveland Browns, which, fine. You know, at least you beat one team by a couple of touchdowns. But then after this, it's a 27-19 win over the Texans, and then a 29-10 win over the Steelers. And I feel like because this was around the holiday times and all of that, and everything there. Oh, a bot forgot to delete the instructions in their chat thing. Whoops. Anyway, because this was during the holidays, right? Like, it's a Saturday game, the last weekend leading up to Christmas, and then it's a Wednesday game that we've never really dealt with that before. So there wasn't a whole lot that was really broken down of those games, and not a whole lot that was really talked about. But that's back-to-back wins over playoff contending teams. And I think it was just explained away as, oh, well, those teams weren't that good anyway. It's like, no, those are a couple pretty good wins. Like, the Steelers, they slipped on a banana peel a couple of times, but they were, at least for a little bit, in contention for the 1 seed in the AFC, and they were dispatched of rather easily by Kansas City. And so I feel like with this Chiefs team, and it happens all the time in every sport, right? Like, it's, oh, LeBron cramped and blah, 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 blah. And you forget, like, the Game 7 against the Celtics and those sorts of things, right? It is easy to focus on the stuff that kind of, the stuff that kind of, like, fits your narrative with a certain team. And that happens with the Chiefs. Like I said, as it does with every dynasty, but it happens with the Chiefs a lot, where it's, oh, it's the refs, oh, it's the this, oh, it's the that. And then you forget that it was a 7-point lead against the Baltimore Ravens. It was an 8-point win over the Texans. And then they beat the Steelers by 19 when the Steelers still had a lot to play for. And so you just forget, like, oh yeah, those don't really count. And instead, you just focus on it was a blocked field goal, and the guy's foot was out of bounds. Oh, they almost lost to the Raiders. Wouldn't have that been embarrassing? Which, yes, but wouldn't have that been embarrassing? And all of those sorts of things. And you kind of forget the really good performances are just like, yeah, whatever. So then, they wrap up the season, they get blown up by the Denver Broncos. Game doesn't matter. They get the bye into the divisional round. In the playoffs, they beat the Houston Texans 23-14. And again, the refereeing conversation rears its ugly head. Did Patrick Mahomes dive? Absolutely. Did a couple of calls favor the Kansas City Chiefs? Of course they did. Was that the reason the Kansas City Chiefs beat the Houston Texans? Of course it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. A couple calls helped. I will grant you that 100%. The Texans were not in that game in the way that this would lead you to believe. Watching that game, I didn't think, oh man, the Texans really got it here. They did not have enough weapons on offense. Could they have been got? Maybe. But that game, that was not because of the officiating. And then you get to the conference championship game in another epic matchup that they beat the Buffalo Bills 32-29 and are now off to the Super Bowl for the 1 billionth time in a row, so it feels. And so again, just in conclusion for it all, the focus is always on the close wins and the wild ways that this team would win based off of how the other team would screw it up. But that is also part of the Chiefs' mystique. They do not beat themselves, like, ever. Dee Ford went offside about a decade ago, and I think that was the last time they beat themselves. And when Patrick Mahomes was definitely concussed in that game against the Cincinnati Bengals. But they never do that. And they fully got lucky in a couple of these games. I will grant you that. They got lucky in a few of those. But they also played their best games of the season against their best opposition. And that showed up one more time in the AFC Championship game against the Buffalo Bills. And while, again, that one comes down to a couple big plays late, there was no officiating controversy. There was no whatever. It was a perfectly designed, perfectly drawn up blitz that forced a actually really good throw from Josh Allen on 4th and 5 that Dalton Kincaid dropped in the fog of war, and then it is a brilliantly executed and drawn up play to get Samaje Perine wide open on 3rd and 8 to seal that game away. When it comes down to winning time, this team is consistently making the big plays, and we can have a debate about clutch on this show, which we probably definitely will at some point, but the fact is that they never crumble in any moment. I don't want to say that, oh, they find their best in whatever. They do get up for big games like no other team I have seen before. And they do play down to their competition like no other great team I have seen before. But when the lights are brightest and the plays mean the most, it is calm and it is perfectly executed 100% of the time, and they force you to feel the weight of the chaos. And that is what makes this team so great. This is a very good football team. The defense is incredible, and the offense has the most talented quarterback I have ever seen, and one of the great minds running it in Andy Reid. So you can say whatever you want about this team and how they got to this game. The fact is that they earned every damn inch of it, and I'm not going to be the one picking against them. Spoiler alert for the Friday podcast. I'm not going to be the one picking against them coming up on Friday, or for the game on Sunday.